All righty then. Okay, you will need one of these new construction contracts. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there somebody else in here? Was she? Brian, okay. Okay, all, hopefully you can hear me. It is 1:02, so let's go ahead and get started. Sherry was going to email out the new construction contract for those of you who are on Zoom. I'm going to mute everyone, so it will automatically mute you. If you need to ask a question though, you will need to unmute yourself so that we don't hear background noise here. Move this little guy.
Everyone that I can see right now should have them in their email. So if they don't, let me know.
Okay. Can everybody, well, let me unmute you because I'm going to ask you a question. So if you cannot see my screen, if you cannot see the screen that says understanding the new home construction contract, let me know. Can everybody see that? All right, perfect. I'm going to do away with this. I am not good at checking chat boxes during these things because I can't focus on more than one thing at a time. So if you have a question, you will need to unmute yourself because I won't know what you're asking. So let's go ahead and get started on this. So new home construction contract, we are going to be building on the fact that hopefully you have been to a residential home construction or residential contracts class. We'll be mostly pointing out the major differences between these two contracts because they are going to definitely be different. So when you're working with the new home construction contract, there are 6 pages to this, a little bit longer. There are 7 pages to the residential contract just because they put the who you work for page on the last one of the residential contract. So as you will use a new home construction contract if you are have a buyer who is purchasing a home that is brand new or never been occupied. Now there will be instances where it is possible that the home may have been built in like 2018, but as long as it has never been occupied, that means the builders never moved into it. It's literally just been sitting there vacant. Sometimes the tax records will say that a house was built in like 2018 because that's when they started it. They may not have finished it until 2019. So it may not have been that it's been sitting on the market for 2 years. It's just that's when they started the construction on it. So, okay, new home construction at the top. This is a real estate commission contract. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner, you're going to see that this contract was last updated in November of 2019. If you're using a contract, please always check the bottom left-hand corner. Make sure you're using the most current version available. I don't know where to put this little guy.
If you're using the builder's contract or if they prefer to use theirs, do you do both?
You can use a builder's contract. That's a great question. So his question was, if the builder has their own contract, can you use theirs or do you need both? So most of the time, a lot of the major builders, Ideal Homes, Home Creations, some of your very large builders may have their own contract. If you're going to use a new or a builder's contract, just please make sure you read it. Do not allow your buyers to sign anything that you haven't read over every inch of, because sometimes they build, the builder is creating a contract that is for them. And it will obviously be in their benefit. It'll be favoring their benefit. So just make sure you read it before you allow your buyers to sign it. Okay, new home construction. So let's talk about, whoops, this area right here. Now, if your home is already built, let's say you're showing your buyer a house, it's just never been occupied before, but the house is completed, then they're already going to have some type of financing in place if they're using financing. If they are using cash, then you won't check anything here. So are they using conventional FHA, VA? So if the house is not finished, maybe you're just talking to the builder about putting together a building plan. So you're going to always start on a home that has not been built yet with a construction loan type contract. Construction loans will always convert to a different type of loan upon completion. So you need to be talking to your buyer's lender. What type of financing will they be converting this construction loan to? Conventional, FHA, or VA, because that will be the final requirement. It's important that the builder know what type of financing the buyer is using, because if they're using FHA or VA financing, there are different standards and different warranties that they have to abide by, including getting an FHA number, VA number, and things like that. Okay, so again, this is going to be the final type of financing once the construction loan is going to be converted. Now, obviously down here in this place, there are other types of loans outside of conventional FHA and VA. Those could be a Native American loan or a USDA loan. USDA will allow you to build with USDA financing as long as the buyer qualifies on other aspects of the USDA loan program. So if you're using USDA and you're building in a rural area that meets their standard, you would be able to use that type of financing for building. Now, above that, if your buyer has a house that they need to sell before they would be able to close on this new construction home or start the building process, then mark the appropriate box, whether the buyer's property is presently under contract or not under contract, and make sure that you're attaching those documents stating that information. Okay, on the left side at the same top, you see single family mandatory homeowners association, the condo association, townhouse. These are simply going to be supplements that indicate that the home is in an HOA and the seller will be providing. That would also, you're probably not going to see this as much, people building with condominiums, because they're typically already built by the time you move in, but it could be. Now, this contract actually has a lot of different places where your buyer is going to be reviewing CC&R HOA covenants and restrictions, but you do need to check mark the top part of that. Now, whoops, why did this go off? All right, my PowerPoint is out of order. That's okay. So let's go ahead and go to the seller part. Please check with your builder and make sure that you know what LLC name they're going to use. Most builders do have some type of LLC or corporation, and that is who the seller will be and who you're contracting with. So it wouldn't necessarily be Ideal Homes. It would be whatever Ideal Homes LLC corporation or corporation name is. And then check what your buyer's legal names are before you write that on the contract. If someone is going to be a party to the loan, they will need to be on this contract. So if you have John and Jane Smith, they're both going to be on the loan. Both of their names need to appear here. If only John is going to be on the loan and Jane is not, then she would not need to be there. Let's go back to this part. Builder provided documents. So you have builder addendum, allowances, specifications, and plans. If the home is already complete and the buyer wants to make some changes, let's say you find a house that's completely done and the buyer doesn't love the carpet in the living room, wants to have that traded out for wood floors, then you're going to need to write that specifically as part of this contract that the builder is agreeing to replace the wood floors. You guys have probably had a conversation about what the cost of that's going to be and who's going to pay for it and how it's going to impact the final numbers. So if your builder wants to raise the price of a home, if it's already finished, it's already completed, and then put in these specifications, they can do that, or the buyer may need to pay for those outside of the contract. If the home is being custom built, you need to make sure that you are attaching the plans to this contract, or that you're going to review if you already have the plans. If not, your buyer is going to have the ability to review those plans within 5 days of going under contract. So if I want to go to XYZ builder, I know that they're the builder that I want to choose, but we haven't finalized all the plans. You're going to have 5 days to get all of that ironed out once you decide on how much you want to spend with them. So all specifications need to be attached to a contract. So all finalized specifications. If you're going to do wood floors in certain areas, or some type of quartz countertops or glass backsplash, things like that, all of that needs to be written out so that everyone's on the same page. You do not want to get to closing and the buyer walk in and go, oh, I thought we decided we were going to do fill in the blank. That usually creates a giant mess. So if the builder is going to be giving any types of allowances, such as fences, blinds, additional garage door openers, closing costs, I've seen them throw in, appliance packages, things like that. Everything needs to be in writing. Builder warranties. You also will get down to the bottom and we'll talk about addressing warranties, but you need to make sure that if you have specific requirements on builder warranties, that those are included. Okay, as we get into the area that's right below where the buyer's legal name would appear, this is also found in the residential contract. All prior verbal or written negotiations, representations, and agreements are going to be superseded by this contract. Buyers and builders love to chit chat all the time. We're standing in front of the house. Can you do this? Yeah, absolutely. Can you do that? I absolutely can. Okay, if it is not in this contract, it does not exist. So if the buyer's like, but we talked about this and you didn't put it in that contract, sorry guys, you're not getting it. So, and keep in mind that they can modify that later. If changes need to be made, modifications can be made in writing, of course, but this is what it is currently. Now, you need to make sure that you know what county the home is located in. Sometimes this can be a little confusing if you're on a border area. So it may have an Oklahoma City address or an Edmond address, but it may be actually located in Logan County. So just make sure you're looking in the correct area. You can get the legal description as we get into the bottom. Legal descriptions are super important, especially if you're in the building process, because the home may not, if it's on an unplatted area, may not have been assigned a physical address yet. So the legal description is never going to change. So either get that from the tax records. If this is a fairly new subdivision and you're not sure what lot block, if it's a platted subdivision and it's like Timber Ridge Addition block this, lot that, and you're not sure which one it is, get those platted subdivision plans from the builder so that you make sure you're writing an offer on the correct lot that they're asking for. That's really important. So again, the physical address, if you're in an unplatted subdivision, may not have been assigned yet. Once a structure is there, then the post office will actually assign a physical address. So if it's on Tecumseh, your physical address may be 0000, which would be 4 zeros in a row, East Tecumseh Road. Okay, again, that physical address will be assigned later, but your legal description should be the same. Now, if once it's built, obviously all fixtures and improvements will be sold with this home, but keep in mind right underneath here, it says this will include all mineral rights owned by the seller. In reality, most of your subdivisions will probably already have those reserved. So if the seller, if a previous seller or this current developer has already reserved those, they will not transfer with the property. So if they haven't reserved them, then they would. Okay, as we get into paragraph 2 is going to be the purchase price. So if the home is already established, if it's a new home, it's completely finished out, then your purchase price is probably what they're going to be advertising it on the MLS for. If it's not on the MLS, then they will already have a stated price on that. I will be really honest, most of the time new home construction purchase prices will stay pretty typical to what they're advertising them for. Builders do not like to reduce their purchase price of what they're advertising it for because it affects their future appraised values. They would rather give you concessions than to come off of that price. Now, that is not 100% on every single transaction, but it's on most of them. So if your buyer's like, can I offer $10,000 less? Obviously, we do have to write those up every single time, but it may not be accurate for setting their expectations. The builder would rather give you closing cost or build a fence or something to that effect. All right. The rule that's in the residential contract, once you guys have an established purchase price and you're going to put earnest money down. Now, a good starting place as in the residential contract is 1% of whatever the purchase price. Your builder, if they're doing a custom build, may ask the buyer for a very specific amount to start the building process. You know, we'll do this, it will require this amount up front. So this may change. You could start with this 1%, but if you're doing a custom build, just know that they may ask you to increase that amount later. So especially if it's a smaller builder or a less well-known builder, they'll require more earnest money up front to start especially if they're carrying the construction note for you. That changes things just a little bit. Now, if the builder agrees to this initial contract, keep in mind you've got 3 days to get that earnest money delivered, and that will not include Saturdays, Sundays, or legal holidays. So let's say if we were to go under contract on Friday, Friday may be day 1, Monday would be day 2, Tuesday would be day 3. That earnest money, whatever you write here, it will be held there. So if I want the earnest money held in my escrow account here at Keller Williams, then I'd write Keller Williams Mullenix there. So it is not a good idea to let small builders hold the earnest money. So you can do that with large, reputable builders. I keep using Idle Homes and Home Creations. They're 2 of our largest builders here in Oklahoma. D.R. Horton, there's a couple of different ones, but I would say small builders who only do a couple of houses a year, that's not a good idea. You can hold it at the title company, you can hold it at the real estate office, but I would probably not let a smaller builder hold that earnest money for me. Okay, anything else I want to say on that? All right, let's talk about closing, funding, and possession. Wish I could make this little thing go away. Let's see how to, let's move it up here so I'm done with that. Okay, as we get into paragraph 3, the closing process will include the execution of documents, delivery of deed, and receipt of funds. So your date on that, if the house is not complete, keep in mind that that may just be an estimated closing date. So that if you're starting the building process with a new builder, you know, they're always going to tell you their estimated close time. It's going to take 6 months to build this. It's going to take 8 months to build this. Obviously, there are factors that are outside of their control. This year, we're dealing with COVID delays. We've dealt with ice storm delays, rain, things like that can always move your closing date. So that's kind of a moving target. But if it's an existing home that's already complete, you should be able to put a pretty exact close date in there and be good. Now let's get down to number 4. Number 4, people get really confused about number 4 because this is the inspection period. Now on a regular residential contract, this date is super important. It's actually paragraph 5 on our residential contract, but it is going to be, when does your buyer have the right to do all of the inspections on the home? Now, this changes just a little bit on a new home construction because you are going to write a date in on this paragraph, or you can leave it blank, just like you could on a residential contract. But I do want to go over this for just a minute. So your time periods for your investigations and inspections and reviews and your finance supplement will commence on whatever date you write in here. So people sometimes write in there after construction is completed. It's not necessary to do that because if the home is not completed and you're in the construction process, there are other stops along the way that allow your buyer to do inspections on the home. So the date that you write in here, or if you leave it blank, 3 days after the last signature appears, indicate when your buyer has the opportunity to do other things within this contract. So incomplete properties will have a separate inspection period built into the contract. But what else do you need to know about the date that you write in here? This is when your date for reviewing warranties, surveys that the builder may have, deed restrictions, all of that's going to begin. So I write this contract today. We get it under, let's say all signatures appear on this today. I've left it blank. Our inspection period is going to begin 3 days from now. And then my buyer has 5 days from that point to review the builder's plans. He can review what type of warranty the builder is going to offer. He can look at the builder's previous survey and, you know, because I want to build this house and I want to make sure I can put a pool on it. Well, I need to review the survey to find out where the easements are going to be to see if I can even use this property for what I need intended to. So I also want to know about the deed restrictions. I'm going to put a shop on this property. Does the CC&Rs allow this type thing? So your date that you have on here or the time reference date is what's going to kickstart all of those review periods and processes, which is a little bit different than our residential contract, because our residential contract, you're literally doing home inspections and things at that time. All right, we're going to move to the next page. So
I have a question.
Yes.
Hey, so on that page right here where it says that you have to do, that they're going to do the inspections, is there a way to see what the CC&Rs are before we put in an offer?
Yeah, you can always ask. Oops, let me go back to that. You can absolutely ask for those before you put an offer in. You may not want to waste your time putting in an offer if it's not something that they could, you know, like if I want to build a 50 by 60 shop or whatever, you may want to ask to see this CC&Rs before you even write the offer so that you're not wasting your time.
And where do you, like, who do I ask for that?
You're probably you can ask the builder or the builder's representative for CC&Rs. They should have a copy of those. If the property is developed already, then they have filed the CC&Rs with the, it's attached to the deed and it should be filed at the courthouse. But you could probably call the local title companies and get copies of those too. Find out where the builder likes to close. So like if I'm here in Norman and the builder typically closes, I don't know, either at First American or Cleveland County Abstract, you could call the title companies, give the addition, and they may be able to pull the CC&Rs for you. But last stop, if you can't find them at the title company, call the builder and get them. He or she should have copies of those.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, going to page 2, again, at the very top. I don't know why this. Okay. This.
Can I come help you with something?
There you go. That's driving me crazy. Okay, what was your question?
Oh, I was just asking if you want me to come help figure that out.
Oh, no, I'm fine. I thought, I know you can get rid of this. I just can't figure it out. Okay, so let's go to page 2. Property address needs to be, now I've done that. At the top, always make sure that your property address is written at the top. If you're using DocuSign or some other type of transaction desk, .loop, you may be able to autofill that information. But if not, if you're physically handwriting things in, make sure that the property address is at the top. So even if it's the 000 North Tecumseh, that way if these papers get separated, it's all the same. All right, let's talk about your investigations, inspections, and reviews. Because this contract kind of toggles on the fact that you either have an existing home or you're in the process of contracting to have one built, this is going to be your time reference date to do inspections. So if you leave it blank, it defaults at 10 days. So, but 10 to 12 days is typical inspection period for a completed home. So do you need to get a home inspection done on a brand new build? Absolutely. These builders are having subcontractors install things and they're not standing over their shoulder making sure that everything is installed correctly. So you're normally going to find some things in a home inspection that maybe things were not connected right or they're not installed correctly and things like that. And you definitely want to know that before you're moving in. Okay, as we get in, keep in mind that on an existing home, it's already completed. The buyer can have anyone that they want come in and do that. Just keep in mind that if it's not a licensed home inspector, they're not allowed to climb on the roof or pull the electric panels off because they don't have the insurance needed, the bonding to do that. So it is encouraged that they get an actual home inspection, but they get to and do all of these inspections. Now on the residential contract, there are 12. And you're going to notice on this one, there are also 12. But the thing that you're going to find that's different about what can a buyer inspect for on a residential contract that may be different than a existing contract. The difference is on the residential contract, number one is you're going to be able to review the property disclosures. So on a new build home where no one has ever lived in it before, they're exempt from disclosures. So there is nothing for them to actually review. Now you're also going to notice on the new build contract, which is a little bit different, is number 10. The buyer gets the right to review the building insulation disclosure, which is going to be attached to the bottom of this contract. So if the buyer doesn't like the type of insulation or details that go with that, then they could have the potential of canceling this contract. So this paragraph, paragraph 5C, is what really defines the difference between a residential regular contract for an existing home versus a new build. On the residential contract for an existing home, your buyer does their home inspection, and then within 24 hours of the end of their inspection period, they got to make a decision. Do I want to move forward with the contract? Or did I find the inspections to be unsatisfactory? Therefore, I'm canceling the contract. You don't have that option on a new build contract. It's super important. Everybody knows what 5C looks like. In this particular paragraph, once the buyer has done their home inspection, they do not have the right to automatically cancel the contract. They have to submit a list of unsatisfactory items to the builder. The builder has an opportunity to correct those things. So if you didn't like how this was installed, or you didn't like the flood runoff or how the water drains, you got 3 days to get that negotiated out. Now, obviously, if the builder is not willing to correct the items and the buyer and the builder cannot agree, then the contract would cancel, but it never is an automatic thing. Now, when we move into paragraph 6 is going to talk about the termite report. Now, every single time, or I say every single time, it's not 100%. Typically, when a house is built, the builder will treat the soil of the property, not necessarily the structure that's being built on it. So in this case, on or before the close date, the seller is going to give the soil report to the buyer to show where they have had the soil treated. Now, let's say that the seller or the builder, seller being the builder, did not have the soil treated. Then at the seller's expense, which would be the builder's expense, he is going to give a report by a licensed extermination company of any structures that were built on the property. So sometimes this happens because the builder only has 1 year after building. Maybe the property's set, he built it, started building in 2018. He's self-funding, so he doesn't finish it until 2020. Well, the soil treatment is 1 year old, so now he needs to have the house actually investigated by a extermination company. So, and he will at his expense do that and provide that to the buyer. Now, again, if during the time that between when it was built and the time that it actually sold, if visible infestation is noted, then the seller is going to be required to pay for the treatment and repairs. This is much different than on the residential contract. On the residential contract, if we want the seller to treat for termites, we have to specifically write that into paragraph 13. Where on the new build contract, it's written in for you. So therefore you don't need to add that paragraph to the blank paragraph. So now soil treatment, again, as I mentioned previously, soil treatment report shall be dated within 1 year prior to the close date. So in the event, let's say they started building it at the 1st of 2019, you're not closing until December of 2020. Then it may be necessary for the builder to get that termite inspection of the structure that we talked about. Okay, Let's move down into construction of the property. Again, as I mentioned before, this contract is used for existing new builds, but it's also used for if you're going to have a house built. So
Hey,
you're,
Peggy,
yes.
on number 5, that first part A, so I know you said 10 to 12 days for completed. What do you do if it's not?
You're going to wait. And when we get into the next page, it will talk about what happens if the house is not completed yet. So,
Okay, so you leave that
you're going
blank.
to have a little bit of extra time on that.
Okay.
And that'll be on the next page. It'll make more sense in just a moment. All right. On the construction of the property, the house is either completed at the time of contract or it's not completed, and it's going to be done according to the plans, specifications, and allowances. Keep in mind that if you are building according to plans, specifications, or allowances, you've got to attach those, make sure that they are in writing. So from 5 days, if you're doing plans, 5 days to get things drawn up, and the buyer is going to have 5 days to review the plans. If they look at the plans and they don't like the allowance, let's say I'm buying a house for $250,000, that's what we're going to contract for, but the builder gives me the specifications and I don't really like the amenities that come with a $250,000 house. I wanted, I don't know, travertine or something imported from Italy or something crazy. They can cancel the contract based on those specifications. So, but keep in mind, keep your 5 days noted, because they will not be able to go outside of that. 10 days later, you're like, your buyer says, I don't really like the material that they're using. It may be too late. Okay. Warranties become super important when you are building a house or when you're buying an existing property. So here we have the seller is going to warrant that any improvements on the property and improvements to be completed will be will be free from defects and all materials and workmanship. Keep in mind, go to the second paragraph or the second line on here. It will be in accordance with the construction standards of the community. So if you're building outside of the metro area, if you're building in an area that doesn't have building codes and restrictions, then you need to decide upfront what that's going to look like. So if you're building in the city of Norman, the construction standards will be different from Norman to Moore, which will be different than Blanchard. So if your buyer's like, well, that's not the way they do it in Norman, but you built your house in Blanchard, they're going to get what they get unless you add something specific to your contract saying otherwise. Any questions on that part? Okay, let's move on to paragraph or page 3. And again, I'm assuming that everyone has taken my residential contract class. If you haven't, I will be doing a Zoom and we'll get that recorded on YouTube pretty quick so you can go back and review that. Again, property address is going to be at the top. We're at page 3. Now we've got a little bit of carryover here because it started the sentence on page 2, but it says upon notice from the seller, and we're going to move on into this paragraph right here. Upon notice from the seller, broker, if applicable, and notifying the broker that the improvements are substantially complete, the buyer at the buyer's expense shall be entitled to inspect the improvements to determine whether the improvements are free of defects and have been completed with the provisions of the contract. So where I said before, we had like a 10 or 15 or 10 to 12 day inspection period, but the house wasn't done yet. So as soon as the seller says, okay, buyer, I have officially completed construction on this, you get a brand new inspection period, okay? So anything that wasn't done before, now you get to come in and take a look at. So keep in mind that that will be at the buyer's expense. If you want to have a home inspection done at that time, then you will be paying for that. So now, if during this period, during this inspection period, your buyer finds something that is considered a defect, it was not installed properly, something was incomplete as per the contract that you signed with the builder, a written detailed list of the defects, uncompleted and unacceptable cosmetic and decorative items will need to be submitted to the lender. They call this the punch list. So if your buyer's walking through, I mean, obviously you're looking for items that we had on the contract that were not done. Maybe they were supposed to tile this area, it didn't get finished. or some, faucets weren't installed. Those are some major ones, but this is going to go all the way down to chips in the wood. Where does paint need to be touched up? Does grout needed to be added here, or mortar need to be added there? All of those type things will make a punch list, and it needs to be fairly detailed. Please don't write on there, touch up all paint in house. Okay, where do you want them to do that? Now, it's a good idea during this period of time for you to be walking through with the infamous blue tape. So you're going to walk through everywhere that you need cosmetic things done. You're going to put tape on so the buyer or the builder understands specifically where that needs to happen. Or you may be sad when you move in and things don't get painted. Yes.
Is it appropriate to use the TRR form?
You can. Yeah, you absolutely can use a TRR form for that. Okay, now, sometimes depending on what needs to be finished, it may not be where you can finish a certain number of items prior to closing. Now, if you're buying a property in town, if the house is substantially finished, you're going to get what's known as a certificate of occupancy, which just means this, in the eyes of wherever municipality that you're building it, they said, okay, it's done and it's ready for somebody to move into. So that's not always, you're not always going to get one of those if you're building out in the country somewhere that doesn't fall underneath the municipality. But certain things may not be finished. Sod being installed, a fence going in, something like that. If it's raining, days and days and days, and you guys need to close on Friday, and the only thing that's not done is the fence, those may be some items that the seller can install after closing, okay? Pending what type of financing you have. So I will tell you that if you're using FHA or VA and you put on your contract that the fence is going to need to be installed, you're not closing on that property until the fence is installed. So, but if you're using a conventional loan, they'll give you a little bit of leeway on that. Our contract, if you use this contract, says seller shall have a reasonable time after closing to complete punch list items. So they may say, okay, we will send somebody over in a week and they will touch up the mortar on the outside, or they will touch up paint, or they'll install the fence, or whatever it is that's not getting done according to your punch list. You need to talk to your buyers about what is considered a reasonable time. That's not a in stone time frame here. Do they want to, will it be a week? Will it be 2 weeks? Are they going to give them 30 days? How does that look for them? So if you just say a reasonable time and 45 days go by and your buyer is going to be calling you going, they still haven't installed my fence. So that can be a problem later. So address that up front so that you don't have problems with that later. Now I put a star beside paragraph 7C because keep in mind that if you change the plans, and this typically is going to be one that you're custom building or in the process of being built, changes, allowances, any alterations that you make can and will cost money. So depending on your builder, your builder may require any changes to be paid for upfront. So we were going to install this grade flooring. You've decided that you want to upgrade that. You may have to physically come out of pocket on the difference with those. There are a few very large builders in Oklahoma that won't make you pay out of pocket for that, but they will it will change your purchase price. If your buyer comes in, and sometimes they get a little crazy and they're like, oh, I want to do this upgrade and that upgrade, please make sure that they're not going over their pre-approved amount because they can get into la la land really, really quick with these things.
I have a question.
Yes.
I've recently had that situation happen. So what happens if those buyers are like, well, we'll just pay out of pocket?
If they're paying out of pocket, if you look at the last, let's say you're buying a house for $250 and it included this type of flooring. They were like, I think I want to do an upgraded flooring. They're going to pay out of pocket for that. And if they get to closing and let's say that said buyer loses their job right before this is supposed to close, they don't get that money back. So they just put a new floor in for somebody.
Okay. Okay.
So, okay. Let's go into the warranties and notice of defects. So most of your buyers are going to offer some type of a warranty. Sometimes that's a 10-year structural, sometimes that's a 1-year structural. Sometimes people think warranty means everything in a house that, you know, if the paint needs to be touched up in a year or something like that, that's not typically going to be the standard. Construction standards or transfer of warranties. If the person who was building it, it's a defect due to their workmanship. So, you know, you start to see a crack in the house, or the cabinets start to separate or something like that, that may be on the builder. But any appliances that the builder has installed, it will be the buyer's responsibility to fill out the registration cards and send them in. So if a year from now your dishwasher stops working, they're going to say, did you send in your warranty information? So that won't necessarily fall back on the builder. That's going to be up to the buyer to complete at that time. But so if your buyer wants to see what type of warranty that particular builder is going to be offering, because they're all different, they need to make sure that they're doing it in the first 5 days that you're under contract, because some do 10-year structurals, and then some say, well, it's only good for 1 year. Paragraph B, 8B, if the sale of this property is going to be financed with FHA or VA, seller, which is the builder, does not have a builder number that's been issued by FHA or VA. FHA and VA will not loan money on this new construction without some type of a warranty. So you need to have a conversation with your builder. So you're going, if they don't offer some type of an FHA or VA warranty, the seller is going to agree to provide the following FHA approved warranty, and you have to write in the type of warranty that they want here, whether that's a 1-year structural, whether that's a 10-year. If you're in an area that does not issue certificates of occupancy because you're outside of the municipality, the builder can purchase a 10-year structural warranty from a third party. So they don't necessarily carry one themselves. It's kind of like getting a home warranty from someone else. And you're going to write in the provider, the details on that line. So you may need to contact the builder and before you're writing this offer and say, do you offer a structural warranty? And if you don't, do you have a third party that you buy one from? And then you'll need that information in order to put there. Seller is not, if you look at 8C, seller is not responsible for any defects, and then unless seller shall have received within 12 months after closing written notice from the buyer specifically listing that defect. So if you don't tell the builder, he's under no obligation to follow up with you and say, hey, are you having any problems? He's just going to assume no news is good news. All right. Paragraphs 9 through 10 talk about who's responsible for putting in meters. As you look at the utility meters, telephone, those things, according to paragraph 10, are going to be the buyer's responsibility. Seller will be responsible for the cost of the permanent installation of those. So if you're buying a property on 5 acres, the buyer may be responsible for bringing the electricity to the property. Meters, you know, obviously the electric boxes inside the house, the builder would be putting those in, but he will not pay for the electric to be brought to the property. Risk of loss on number 11 just indicates that the seller's insurance will be covering the property until the time that the property transfers, and then the buyer's insurance will cover it after that. As we move into title evidence, so you have commitment for title insurance and the attorney's opinions, which is very much like the residential contract. You're going to check mark 1. If you're getting a loan on the property, keep in mind that the lender is going to want title insurance to protect themselves. So therefore it would only be a $50 fee for the buyer to get their own title insurance, which is always a great idea. But when we look underneath the title evidence under B3, it says an inspection report, commonly known as the mortgage inspection certificate, prepared subsequent to the time reference date by a licensed surveyor, which shall include a representation of the boundaries without pin stake surveys, will be provided. So I want you to know this is a mortgage inspection report provided by the seller before the structure was built on it. So when he platted that subdivision, this is what it looked like, okay? Now, after the structure is built on it, the lender may require another survey to be done on the home, because remember, lenders do not go out and put eyeballs on this property. They want to know, okay, according to this particular lot or this parcel of land, where is the house on it? You know, where is the well? Where is the septic? Those type things. So you're probably going to end up with two, one done before the house was built, one done after. If you're getting a home that already is existing, you're probably going to end up with another survey on it too. Okay, page 4. Again, property address at the top. This area, right to examine title evidence, talks about the title commitment. It is the exact same thing as the residential contract. Title commitment's always going to be sent to the real estate agent from the title company. They will email it to you. Your job is to review it and then send it on to your buyers. So if you do not know how to review title evidence, we cover that during post-licensing. So, or see me, just call me and I can help you review it. As we move in to things that could cause a delay, you don't have this very often, but if something were to come up that caused a cloud on the title, the contract is automatically, according to this blank spot, unless you change it, will extend 30 days. So maybe we thought we were going to move in on, let's say today, because we want to get in by Thanksgiving. They find a cloud on the title. This may extend well past Christmas, okay? Or right around the Christmas period automatically. If your buyer cannot extend, or they choose not to extend this contract due to clouds on the title, then you need to write the number 0 in or change that date in some way, shape, or form. All right. I don't know why that keeps going off. Taxes, assessments, and prorations. This gets a little hairy because if it is an existing home, they're going to, if it's an existing home, it's completed, they're going to assess it based on whatever it sells for. So there will be a tax calculation that they used, and they'll put, you know, what the property is selling for. But keep in mind that the ad valorem taxes, which are your property taxes for the current year, will be prorated through the date of closing, and it's not a fixed number because it depends on what your final number is. So if you contract on this house for 250, but you do some upgrades that cause the house to close at 260, they're going to assess you on the higher, obviously the higher amount. Okay, as we get into evidence of payment. Number 14, just like the right to inspect the property is super important, this is super important. Evidence of payment. I've seen more people buy a new house and then find out in 5 years they have liens on their property that they were unaware of. So let's talk about this one for just a minute. Evidence of payment. Prior to or at closing, the seller is going to submit an affidavit, which in reality at title, they say, do you have any work that could cause a lien to be on the property? And the seller is going to say no, and they're going to sign an affidavit and they're going to notarize his signature. Okay. So, all right. With that, he is telling you that he has done all the payrolls. He's paid all of his subcontractors. He doesn't have any material bills or any other type of indebtedness on the construction at all. Now, I will tell you with small builders that don't have a running history of things, I don't take their word for it on things. I make sure that I follow through with the second half. You have to actually request this. It's not done automatically, but if you request it, you can require lien waivers to be signed by all subcontractors prior to closing, which is a really good idea if it's a new builder or an unknown builder to have that done. We had a property that was for sale by a builder that only built a few houses. Seller went to go sign it or resell it about 5 years later and found out at that time all the subcontractors had put liens on her property because they had not been paid. So even though the seller had signed an affidavit at closing saying, yes, I've paid them all, So in Oklahoma, they have 120 days from the completion of their project to file those liens. They did that. She had about $10,000 worth of liens. That fly-by-night builder had disappeared and they could not find him to enforce this part of the contract. So I think it's a good idea. So nope. All right. Let's go down. Obviously, paragraph 16 is the same as the residential contract. If a dispute comes up, you agree to mediate before you take each other to small claims court. And then breach of close will be the same as the residential contract. Keep in mind, I want to bring this up because I've had several people say this lately. My buyer just never delivered the earnest money. Failure to deliver earnest money does not make an invalid contract. It only gives the seller the ability to sue the buyer if they choose. Keep in mind, earnest money is a part of the contract. It's not the contract. Signatures at the bottom constitute the contract. We'll go to page 5, property address being at the top. I love incurred expenses because it's very easy to understand. You order it, you pay for it. Okay, so builder orders it, he pays for it. Seller or buyer orders it, they pay for it. And then your release of earnest money goes through the exact same process as the residential contract. Ideally, if something were to fall apart, both parties will agree to who gets the earnest money. If that doesn't happen, you go to mediation. If it's not resolved in mediation, you go to a small claims court. So if the broker is holding the earnest money and everything falls apart, then they will exercise option 4 underneath paragraph 18B. Here, paragraph 20 talks about the insulation disclosure. So seller will provide the insulation information within 5 days of the time reference date, and the buyer has the opportunity to review. If they find the insulation to be unsatisfactory, they can cancel the contract. The insulation, if you will look down here at the bottom of the page, this is the insulation disclosure here at the bottom. So you may in actuality be sending this contract over to the buyer, or excuse me, to the builder. And once he agrees to this contract and signs it, he will fill this in prior to signing the bottom of the contract. Oops, what happened? Hold on. Oh, no, 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 no. We do not want to do that. Let's just move it because we were almost done. Okay, we're back. So now we have this controller thing at the top again. Hide the floating. Okay, so we're on page 5. We talked about the order it, you pay for it. So this paragraph right here, even though it's a new build contract, please write a date in here. You're making an offer to the builder. He is either going to accept it or not accept it by this particular date and time. So you need an expiration date on this. Buyers will always sign, again, if the builder counter offers at any place, he would not sign the bottom of this. And then this is what, as I mentioned before, the building insulation disclosure needs to be filled in by the seller. Now notice underneath the building insulation, it has seller's signature. That's where the builder will sign saying that he completed that information for the buyer. Okay. And last page, again, property address, write your information on it. And that is the nuts and bolts of the actual contract. Now, if you're still using some type of financing, make sure you're attaching the finance page. If you have a home that needs to be sold, make sure that you are attaching the appropriate documentation for that. Do you have any questions? Does anybody at home have questions?
Can you flip back to page 4 so I can take a screenshot of it, of your notes?
I can't.
Thank you.
This will be on YouTube.
I believe that Sherry will be loading this to YouTube. Yes.
Okay. I had a question. So how does this all work when someone is buying, let's say, land and they want a new build? How do we work with the loan, or yeah, like the lenders on that?
Every lender and every builder will be a little bit different. Most of your builders, most of your builders have plots of land that they already own. So if the builder that you're choosing already owns the land, then you would just get a construction loan on it. And then you would have a conversation with your lender about what you're going to convert it to once it's done. If your builder does not own that land, they're probably going to want you to own that land, and then they will build on it. So there's not very many builders who have the capital necessary to purchase the land and then float the construction loan too.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that makes sense. So then the person would have to buy the land first with, let's say, USDA loan or whatever, if it was going to be out in like a rural area. And then they would have one of the builders build on the home.
right.
Then is that a different loan for that?
No, you're still getting a construction loan. You're still getting a construction loan on that. I don't know that you can use USDA to buy just the lot. So I think if you're gonna use USDA financing, you're gonna have to find a builder who already has the lots or the land.
Oh, okay. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Because USDA is for residents only.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was for like moving out in a rural area and that you can build on it as well. So
Well,
it would have.
Yeah, you can. But when you buy your land, that's a two-step process. You buy the land, then you contract the builder. And with USDA financing, you can't use USDA financing if you previously owned land. So there's like a little catch-22, because technically once you went to go build on it, you would actually already own land. Therefore, you're now disqualified from using USDA.
Oh, okay.
That's why you have to, yeah, it's kind of a little gray area. That's why you have to find a builder who already has the property.
That's why Ideal Homes is so big. They have a lot.
And so that's why if you're going to use Ideal Homes, you can't go pick out your land and then typically call them. They want you to build on something that they already own.
Right. That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, record time today, so we don't even need until 3 o'clock. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to call or email me. So, and that will conclude our class.
Thank you, Peggy. You're the best.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Peggy.
Bye.
Let me end this.